In the bustling city of Al-Rafid, there was a beggar named Hassan who lived on the streets. Every day he sat in the marketplace with his worn-out clothes and a tin cup in his hand, begging for coins. His voice, though, was not like other beggars. When Hassan sang his old songs, people would stop in their tracks, drawn by the haunting melody. But Hassan didn't look like an ordinary beggar. He had a royal air about him, something in the way he held himself, even though he was poor and dirty. He sang of a kingdom far away, of a lost throne, and of a king who disappeared many years ago. His songs made people feel the pain of loss and longing. One day, a nobleman named Zayd overheard Hassan's song. He was struck by how familiar the song sounded, as if it told the story of a kingdom he had heard of in his childhood. He wondered, could it be true? Was this beggar really a prince? Zayd couldn't shake the thought of the beggar. He returned to the marketplace the next day, hoping to speak to Hassan. He found him sitting in his usual spot, eyes closed as he hummed softly. "Excuse me, beggar," Zayd said, his voice gentle yet curious. "I've heard you sing of a kingdom far away. Can you tell me more about it?" Hassan looked up with a spark of recognition in his eyes. "Ah, the kingdom of Al-Mahra," he said, his voice rough but warm. "I was born there, you know, but the king was betrayed and my family lost everything." Zayd felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean? Are you saying you're a prince?" Hassan smiled sadly. "Yes, but I've been cast out. A prince with no kingdom, a king without a throne?" Zayd stared at Hassan, his mind racing. Could this man truly be royalty? And if so, why had he ended up in the streets? That night, Zayd couldn't sleep. He thought of Hassan and his words. He had heard stories of a royal family in Al-Mahra, but the kingdom had fallen into ruin years ago. No one knew what had happened to the king and his family. Had they all died? Or was there a survivor? Zayd decided to return to Hassan the next day. He needed to know more. When he found Hassan again, he asked, "What happened to your family, Hassan? Why are you here on the streets?" Hassan's eyes grew distant as he began to speak. "My father was King Salim of Al-Mahra. He ruled with wisdom and kindness. But there were traitors in the palace. They poisoned his mind, and one by one, they took everything from us, our land, our wealth, and our crown." "Who were these traitors?" Zayd asked, his voice tense. "They were the very people my father trusted most," Hassan replied bitterly, "and now I'm nothing but a beggar, singing of a past that will never return." Zayd realized that Hassan's words weren't just a sad story, they were a call for justice. Zayd couldn't ignore the fire burning inside him. Hassan's story was real. The lost kingdom of Al-Mahra needed a king, and Hassan, though poor and ragged, might be the rightful heir. Zayd decided to help him reclaim his throne. But it would be dangerous. "I know someone who can help," Zayd said. "We must go to the royal city. I know where the key to your kingdom's restoration lies." Hassan looked skeptical, but hopeful. "And where is this key?" "The people," Zayd replied. "The people of Al-Mahra still remember your family, even if they've lost hope. We must gather them and convince them to rise against the current rulers." Hassan's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of life. "Then let's go. Let's awaken the people." The next morning, Zayd and Hassan began their journey toward Al-Mahra. It was a long and dangerous road, but Zayd was determined. They traveled by night to avoid the guards, and during the day they hid in caves and quiet villages. Along the way, Hassan shared more stories of his family and the golden days of his kingdom. He spoke of his father, King Salim, and his gentle rule. He told Zayd how his mother, Queen Amina, had been a woman of great strength and wisdom, loved by all the people. But the more they traveled, the more Zayd realized that Hassan wasn't just a prince. He was a man with the heart of a king. His songs were more than just memories of a lost kingdom. They were a call to arms, a summons to reclaim what was rightfully his. As they neared the border of Al-Mahra, strange things began to happen. At night, Zayd would hear whispers in the wind, voices calling out to him. It was as if the land itself was alive, waiting for the return of its true ruler. One evening, as they rested by a fire, Hassan looked out into the darkness. "The kingdom has been waiting for someone to come back," he said softly. "The land itself remembers the bloodline." Zayd shivered. The more he learned about Hassan's past, the more he understood that this journey was not just about reclaiming a throne, it was about restoring balance to a kingdom that had been broken by betrayal. When Zayd and Hassan reached the heart of Al-Mahra, they began spreading the word of Hassan's true identity. At first, people were skeptical. They remembered the fall of the kingdom and the false rulers who had taken over. But Hassan's song stirred something deep inside them. Slowly, people began to gather. They listened to Hassan's story and they saw the fire in his eyes. They remembered the golden days of King Salim and Queen Amina. The people began to dream of a time when they could live in peace again. But not everyone was happy with the growing rebellion. The current rulers, who had taken the throne after King Salim's death, feared that Hassan would bring the people's anger down upon them. They sent spies to watch Hassan and Zayd, hoping to stop the movement before it could gain any more strength. One night, as Hassan and Zayd were meeting with the rebels, the palace soldiers arrived. A battle broke out in the streets of Al-Mahra. The rebels, though outnumbered, fought fiercely for their freedom. Hassan stood at the front, his heart full of courage. "Fight for your kingdom," Hassan shouted. "Fight for your future." The soldiers, though trained and well-armed, couldn't match the passion of the people. The battle was long and hard, but in the end, the rebels drove the soldiers away. As dawn broke, the streets of Al-Mahra were filled with cheers. The people had won their first victory. They had proven that they would not sit quietly while their rightful king was denied. After the victory, Hassan and Zayd felt hopeful. They thought they had begun to turn the tide in their favor, but that night, as they celebrated with the people, Zayd was approached by one of his old friends. "I've heard whispers of your plan," his friend said, voice low. "The palace is moving against you. You're in danger." Zayd's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "My brother is one of the palace guards," the friend said. "They know Hassan's identity. They plan to strike before you can gather more support." Zayd rushed to Hassan's side, telling him the terrible news. They had to act quickly. The next morning, the palace launched a full attack on the rebel camp. Soldiers flooded the streets, and the sound of battle filled the air. Hassan and his followers fought bravely, but they were greatly outnumbered. Zayd fought alongside him, but they were pushed back. The rebels had no choice but to retreat to the outskirts of the city. Hassan's heart was heavy with grief. How could he reclaim his throne if he couldn't even protect his people? But even in the darkest hour, Hassan did not give up. He knew that his destiny was to lead his people no matter the cost. As the siege continued, Zayd and Hassan took refuge in an old fortress hidden deep in the desert. Here they regrouped and planned their next move. "We will not give up," Hassan said, his voice firm. "The people are with us. We will rise again." Zayd nodded. "We need more support. We need to gather the other villages and tell them the truth." Together, they sent messengers to the surrounding villages calling for reinforcements. The battle for Al-Mahra was far from over.